Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Marcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting... The year is 20XDX, and robot masters have run amok. We are revisiting MegaMan 2 today, an all-time classic video game from the Nintendo Entertainment System, released in 1988 in Japan and 1989 the following year in the United States. I played the shit out of this game. I love it so much. It was so much fun to revisit this. And, of course, I'm not doing it alone. He is the rock to my roll. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast again, Rich Baker.
So honored to be back every time, Doug. It's a pleasure.
So, you had been talking to me about doing this one for a long time, so I'm glad we're getting around to it. Tell me about why you wanted to talk about MegaMan 2, he said as he slipped from his E-Tank mug.
Oh, nice mug, yeah. I've got so many memories of me playing different Mega Man games throughout my childhood, but Mega Man 2... I know that, for me, a lot. Like, I definitely remember playing through it, but I know that in a larger scale, that there wouldn't be Mega Mans after one if it wasn't apparently 2 was opened up a bridge, and Mega Man X and Mega Man 3 and so many. I haven't even played all of them, but this one really busted it wide open. The first one's good, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit, but this one really upped the ante by quite a bit.
Yeah, the production of this, I think, is one of the most interesting things about it. But tell me about your nostalgic memories of it. Like, being a kid, I mean, I assume you must have owned the cartridge.
I owned the first Mega Man cartridge. It was one of the, my Nintendo came with, Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, and Track and Field, because I had the Power Pad. But I think the first game that I bought after that game that came with it was the first Mega Man game. And I played the heck out of it.
Well, that puts you in rare company because the original Mega Man was not a big seller. It was Mega Man 2 that, as you said, busted everything wide open. I did not have Mega Man 1, but I had a friend who did, and I played it after I had played the second one, and it was an interesting kind of novelty to go back to. It's much harder. It's real unforgiving, and it almost feels like a proof of concept for what Mega Man 2 would be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but Mega Man 2 had better replay value for me, and it was. I also remember feeling super satisfied when I beat Mega Man 2. I never actually could beat the first Mega Man, but I did make my way through Mega Man 2, and that I remember. There weren't a lot of games I could beat. I wasn't that kind of a gamer. as a kid. So when there was one that I could actually make my way through, I felt pretty proud of myself.
Yeah, my nostalgic memories of it, of course, are just, playing it a lot. I have a few oddball memories. So, like, there was this kid I knew who, wasn't really my friend. He was my mom's friend's son. So that just happens when you're a kid, right? You end up playing with your parents' friends' kids. And he had it. Yeah, of course. And I remember giving me this whole spiel about how he had made up lyrics to the music from the game, and him singing along to when we were playing it, like these lyrics he had made up. I wish I could remember them because I'm sure they were really something. I don't remember them, but that was like an odd memory I have. And we'll talk about the soundtrack, which is another all-time great.
Absolutely
a baller of a soundtrack. So maybe the best thing to do for people who don't know this game is to kind of talk about just the nuts and bolts of what it is.
Yeah, so if you're in Japan, it's called Rockman, but here in the U.S., we always know him as MegaMan, and that's you're this little blue guy with an arm blaster, and you basically need to defeat bosses at the end of levels they're all robots. Every enemy is a robot except the very end boss, which is Dr. Wily, and he's the mastermind behind it all. He's the mega boss. Once you beat him, you've restored peace, essentially.
Yeah, and the way the game actually works, so you have classic NES, run left to right mostly, but you run through these levels. You have a much tighter little jump arc than Mario. His control is actually extremely tight, and they nailed that in the first game. Yeah. Like it's not any different from game 1 to game 2, and really it's the same on all of the NES games 1 through 6. And so you've got this tight little jump arc, you've got this little blaster with unlimited ammo, and each time you defeat one of these robot bosses, you get a new type of weapon based on their theme, because all of them are kind of thematic, that have sort of use cases, and they have, unlike your regular blaster, they have limited ammunition, but really virtually unlimited ammunition because the enemies drop so much. When you kill them, they'll drop more ammo, and you pick it up and you fill back up your meter. And so it's all about learning, like, okay, what weapon do I use for what occasion? And then, you just make the other innovation, of course, that you can do these levels in any order you choose, although there is, as we'll talk about, a kind of a recommended order for this based on what is sort of an 8-way rock, paper, scissors about how each of the game's bosses is vulnerable to one of the other's weapons. So you pick a good place to start, and then you just kind of, once you know it, you work through them in that order to make taking them out very, very easy.
Yeah, and it was one of those early games that I experienced where it was like you level up, right? It's like you start out, you just got your blaster. Okay, you beat your first boss. Now you've got a new weapon, and by the end of the game, you have this huge array of different tools essentially for every situation that you can run into.
Right, and you also get 3 different. I don't know what to call these. They're not weapons really, but they're sort of traversal tools. So there's like little elevators you can make to go up. There's a little like rocket jet that takes you across the map really quickly. You also get, as I alluded to earlier, energy tanks, which are just these refillable tanks of health that you can deploy when you need to give yourself a little more energy. And that was another way of offsetting the crushing difficulty of the first game that did not have these. So you can find them out in the environment. And if you miss one, you can replay the stage after you have the tools you need to go get it. And collect all of these, because you'll probably need them for the last stretch of levels in Dr. Wily's castle.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it's very built up in a nice way. It's like once you're equipped, then the ante goes much higher. And then you have to refight the bosses, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure.
Yeah. But this is probably a good time to talk about the development of this, which is actually, it's really sweet because, like we said, the original Mega Man was not a big hit. So when the director, the main brains behind this is a guy named Kenji Inafune. And they went to Capcom, the developer, and said, we'd really like to make a second Mega Man game. And they said, it wasn't a big seller, but basically if you want to make this on your own time, we'll let you. So the entire team did this as a labor of love because they over like 3-4 months. Which, wow. The lucky thing they had was that the fundamental engine didn't change from 1 to 2. They didn't have to totally reinvent the wheel. They had to make new stages and new bosses and new weapons and stuff. But sort of some of the hard work was done. But nevertheless, they were doing this stuff after hours, and kind of, on a wing and a prayer. It ended up being one of the most beloved games in this franchise and for the entire platform. And like I said, there were six games on the NES. There were these games that were made for the Super NES later, this X series, then Mega Man Legends. Like the entire series exists because of this. It was this, somehow Hail Mary that worked. And like that, you can feel that when you play it. Like you can feel that it's a labor of love.
Yeah, there were a lot of one and done games back in the day, and I feel like it's kind of like TV shows. Sometimes they need a season to cook before, and then it's, this is a huge franchise, but we didn't see it with the first game, and it's really cool. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that this was the first time that they did the fans wrote in to name the bosses contest. You know about this?
Yeah, no, I do, because I remember doing it. Contributing ideas when I think it must have been for Mega Man 3, because they kept doing this. The fans could send in ideas for these robot guys. So all of the bosses in this game, it's like Wood Man, Air Man, Heat Man, Bubble Man, right? So there are all these robots.
Some word man.
Yeah. And that's their naming convention throughout the series. And I remember that, like working with going to a friend's house, and we were just dashing them out. I was drawing them as quick as I could think of them, and we sent them all in. I don't believe any of them ended up in Mega Man 3, but they must have received thousands of submissions of fairly similar stuff, so it's hard to know.
Yeah, I submitted some too as a kid, but I also did not make the cut. I think they would have let you know, like there were actual prizes for those.
Yeah, I'm sure I would have heard something if I had won it. Yeah. And they've put their thumb on the scale a little bit in that they were already well into designing these levels. So like they had this idea for a forest level, and so they just sort of looked at the submissions like, well, which of these guys would fit a forest? Oh, someone came up with an idea for Woodman. Perfect. Okay, we'll put him in there, right? And you can sort of feel that because like there's I think it's Flashman has this very ice. Like his stage is full of like these slippery ice blocks and stuff. Flashman himself is not ice themed, so you can feel they were kind of like, we like this Flashman idea. We already built this ice level, so he can live here. It's close enough.
Yeah, well, his superpower is that he freezes time, so freeze. I mean, it's pretty weak, but
yeah. And so we'll talk about each of the stages in turn, but and of course you'll be hearing bits of the soundtrack that go with it because the soundtrack by composer Takashi Tateishi. I may be pronouncing that wrong. It's incredible. And what I found out about him was, a lot of the composers who were working at Capcom at that time, they all had these classical music backgrounds. And Tateishi had like a background of playing in a rock band. And man, does that show. And again, you'll be listening to it throughout this episode, but like they all sound like, as best as you can on the NES's limited chip. It's rock music.
Yeah, I mean, rock music makes sense to me.
Well, if you go to if you ever find any of these bands that like cover, old game music and play it, like you're guaranteed to hear this. Like it's such a natural fit.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to get into the bosses?
Sure. So the game opens with this cute little cutscene, which again, like kind of an innovation over the first one, where you see this like Neo Tokyo looking city, and Mega Man looking over it. It's a really nice little intro because again, the plot is really it's not necessary and thin, but it's enough to be evocative. And he teleports out and we're off. And so you can tackle these stages, like I said, in any order, but there is probably a best order to do it. I don't have that in front of me, but you probably want to start with Metal Man.
Yeah, because his weapon is so useful.
Right. So Metal Man stage is it's like a factory, as you would expect, right? It's full of gears and kind of the gameplay. The unique gameplay feature of this level is it's got a lot of conveyor belts in it and going in either direction. So you have to sort of manage your footing as you make your way through. But yeah, Metal Man himself goes down pretty easy, even with your basic weapon. But what you get for it is this like spinning saw blade that you can fire in 8 directions.
Yeah, which is very useful.
Well, that's because your primary weapon just fires ahead of you in a straight line, which is okay. Yeah. But anytime you have enemies that are coming from above or below, now you have a problem because you don't have a weapon that can go that way. So this does, and you could spend most of the game just with this equipped. It's
yeah, and it doesn't because as you said earlier, you get a meter for like how much ammo you have, but I believe it was just like 1 little pixel per blade, so you had a lot.
Yeah,
a lot of blades.
Right. Some of these go down at different rates. Where like you have like all of the meters visually look the same, but yeah, one metal blade is probably like 1 tick off of that meter. Whereas some of the others, where it's like the Flashman thing, you can only use like twice. Or once, I think, actually, depending on how.
I think that one's just once, actually.
Yeah. So you have to be judicious in how you use some of them, but this one you don't. It's basically like, yeah, here, have a free one on us. Go nuts.
Yeah. And it's a lot of fun to play with it once you get it.
I agree. And next after that, I'm not sure who you would go to. Who's weak to?
Well, according to the fandom wiki, you would go to Flashman after Metal Man.
Right, interesting. So yeah, this is the one we talked about. This stage is much more vertical, or has a lot more like. This is not your classic Super Mario thing where you just go left to right. These levels will have a little more, up and then over and then down and maybe back to the left. It's still a path, but it's a slightly more interesting path. And Flashman's level has some like paths within paths because depending on which track you kind of get yourself onto, some of them will go to like an energy tank. Or a free life or something, and others won't.
Yeah, and this game, there were some other games after it that definitely did this, but this is one of the first games I remember that like it almost felt more like an obstacle course to get to the bosses than it was a bunch of enemies. Right? It's like in Castlevania, it was like, oh, the enemies are coming at you, I gotta whip them. But like this is more like the enemies are there, but like if they hit you at this spot, you'll fall on the spikes or you'll fall off the thing, and so the maneuverability was really the challenge in these levels.
Yeah, this one in particular because it's like as we said before, it's very slippery. So your normally tight movement is kind of inhibited. This one also features, I believe, some of those like they do this thing with these disappearing, reappearing blocks on kind of a timer. So you got to get it's about one. It goes like once a second, and you get used to the rhythm and you watch it a few times, then you go, okay, I got to jump on this thing, and then I know it's about time to jump because it's going to disappear under my feet before the next one appears. So you have to memorize the pattern to traverse those things. Or if you've made it there with one of these other traversal tools, you can obviate that by zipping past them on the the little rocket scooter or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you get to Flashman himself.
Yep.
Who you want to describe what he does?
Sure. Trying to pull it up real quick, but because the funny thing about and this is true with a lot of the Mega Man series is that the power that you get from the boss is not necessarily the weapon they're using against you.
But in this case, I believe it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Go ahead and take it if you remember.
Yeah, no, he freezes time. So he'll freeze time, and so all of a sudden you're stuck, and he goes and he hits you. So you want to use Metal Man's blade to take him down, and now you have a time freezing tool. So where does the wiki say to go next? I used to have this totally internalized, and now I don't.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I did too way back in the day. According to this, Quick Man is the next thing to do.
Yeah,
which is Boomerang.
Man stage, this is really tough because this is more, it's vertical and it involves a lot of like you're just falling. And you can fall as long as you want in this game. You won't get hurt as long as you don't land on like spikes or an actual bottomless pit. But so you're falling down these vertical shafts while these lasers are kind of coming in from the sides, and they will kill you in one hit. So you have to basically find this correct path to fall to avoid those. Basically, so you fall faster than they come in from the sides. But since you've got the Flashman thing, you get one shot to freeze time for however many seconds it lasts until it runs out. So you want to kind of use this. You get past some of the easier parts, and then when you get to the part where it's really hairy, you fire off this, and then you sail through.
Yeah, and I think it's impossible to do without the time freeze, as far as I know.
It's not impossible, but it is very.
No,
no, it's not impossible, but it is a very narrow margin for error.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get to Quickman, who's this guy in a little robot in a little pink leotard, who throws who throws boomerangs.
Yeah,
and you freeze time, and he basically dies. It's immediate.
Yeah, it's not not that hard to get him.
Yeah, again,
and then quick.
I was gonna say one thing that happens when it's kind of cute when you get the new power. It takes you to this screen where it shows your because you change colors depending on which one you're armed with. So it shows this little cute cartoon version of you changing colors that it shows, you got this this particular power. And again, for a handful of them, you additionally get that traversal tool. So like Dr. Light, he's your creator, will chime in and go, "Oh, guess what? You got a new thing too. Here's this."
Yeah, which is, a little bonus.
Yeah. Oh, also, we didn't mention this, but the game has a password system, which was nice because you couldn't save your game. And a lot of NES games, they didn't have. There were a handful of games that had battery packs on them where you could, but here you couldn't do that. But if you died, you could get this it's like a 5x5 grid of dots. And so I remember having pages and pages where I'd write down all of the dots to resume where I had left off.
Yep, I had a whole notebook of and I'd draw it out and then I'd write under, this is this and that, it's a whole thing.
So then you take
ready to go underwater?
Yeah, we take that boomerang and we go underwater to Bubble Man's stage.
Bubble Man. One of the, you start above water, but there's this really cool waterfall behind you, and then eventually you go underwater, which is the pro of being a robot. You don't have to breathe.
Right. You don't have to breathe, but you are still vulnerable to the tons of spikes that are on the top of the ceiling. And they, again, mess with the physics here because your jump will take you much higher, all the way to the top of the screen, than it would, obviously, on dry land. So you have to manage that very carefully and be very gingerly tap that jump button to avoid I remember when I was younger, I eventually got good at it, but for a long time, this was a hard thing for me because I keep damn it, I just keep banging myself into the ceiling and dying instantly. And you get this amazing little NES, pew, pew, as a bunch of circles just come out of you and you have to restart.
Yeah, again, every level, again, they really make it an obstacle course because you've got the spikes on the ceiling that you don't want to hit, and then you've got to, go down a path where there's spikes on both sides, so you're going to kind of, time your fall, and then you got another set of jumps over a bottomless pit kind of deal.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about the aesthetics here. The graphics on this I think, remain really impressive. For the much more so than the original Mega Man. They're much more interesting backgrounds, and the character designs are very anime cute robots. They're some of the cutest designs possible on the NES.
Yeah.
And so for example, here one of the enemies you face is this giant robot anglerfish. Really detailed stuff for the NES. Much more detailed. It's much larger and more interesting looking, and you just have to manage kind of avoiding these projectiles it's throwing at you as you kill the little you focus your fire on the like little thing on the end of the angler's angle. I'm not a marine biologist. I don't know what you call that thing. His dingle dongle. You shoot his dingle dongle till he dies. So there's,
this is one of many examples of a character that has a personality, right? Like the way his face and eyes, like you almost like feel like it's like a person, right? Like a game like Contra, you know, you don't even see faces or anything. It's just like a little dot for the head. But this game, like all the bosses, like their eyebrows move and stuff like that. And this anglerfish is like it's very interesting, like picture.
Yeah. I mean, and that's true. Like I said, throughout these levels, we should highlight some of the cool visual things in each of those. There isn't too much in Flashman, Quickman, or Metal Man stage. Unfortunately, those are some of the more bland ones. But this one is really expressive. And so, you make your way to Bubble Man, and you use the boomerangs on him. He goes down pretty quick. But basically, he is throwing kind of like bubbles at you, and all of these things are kind of the same. All of the boss rooms. It's a square room. Sometimes the floor is uneven, but it's one screen that's the square. You are locked in. Like this gate comes down behind you. You know, he jumps in. There's a little like fanfare as their health meter goes up, and then it's a matter of just simply dodging him as he bounces around the room and whatever projectiles the boss throws at you.
Well, yeah, and in this one, it has those same spikes on the ceiling you were talking about. Right. So you've also got to avoid those.
Right, and which kill you, like I said, one hit, you're dead.
Instantly. Yeah.
So you take those bubbles, and you take them over to Heat Man, as I recall.
Heat Man.
I love his design. He's like a cigarette lighter with arms and legs and a head.
Yeah. And he does look like a Zippo kind of like Mr. Zippo could be his alternative name.
Yeah, it's a golden Zippo with like red arms and legs. And his stage looks like it was probably designed to be a sewer, and they made it red.
It feels like Mario Level 2, like very underground, a lot of bricks kind of thing, but they made it lava. Yeah,
there's this, very brightly colored sludge flowing along the bottom in most places, which is, it looks like lava. Again, you mentioned like Mario Level 2, but like Mario World 1, 2, it's a black background and some bricks. Like it's as rudimentary as the NES got. It was, very early in the console's life cycle.
Sure.
This is, this looks pretty good. It's, again, it's very, expressive in terms of the backgrounds. You get all kinds of weird like fire creatures and like spouts of fire as you make your way through this. And
and they really make the most of color on the NES in this game, because this Bubble Man's felt very blue. This feels very red.
Yeah, they do a really good job in this game of differentiating each place, as making it feel like it's its own unique biome or environment.
Yeah,
and so again, you just kind of make your way through this one. Not a lot of gimmicks to it, other than a lot of like kind of bottomless pits full of lava.
Here, a lot of those.
That's their main thing. There's a lot of those disappearing, reappearing blocks here. In fact, there's one notorious section where it just kind of goes on and on and on and on with those, and you have to do it for a really long time. Or again, you zip past them with the jet, which is the correct way to do it.
Yeah. Take it easy on yourself.
Yeah, and you get to Heat Man, and the trick with the bubble jet is that it creates this fairly sizable like one bubble that arcs in front of you and hits the ground and then rolls along the ground. It kind of does the exact opposite of what you would expect a bubble to do.
Yeah. These are machine bubbles, so they got their own physics.
What it behaves more like is a hula hoop, like rolling along the ground. You hit Heat Man with enough of those, and he goes down while he's just sort of throwing fireballs at you.
Yeah. They make the bosses almost too easy when you know the right weapon to use.
Well, yeah, if you know the right weapon to use, then they really go down without a fight. Even if you're just using your Mega Buster, it's often kind of like, it's just what I know some other podcasters call this a DPS. It's a damage per second race, which is you shoot him, he shoots you, and as long as you're shooting him enough, you'll survive. His meter goes down faster than yours, you're okay. And that's kind of all there is to it. I mean, I think they mentioned that in the production that they did not have as much time as they would have liked to kind of make the bosses more interesting. They kind of poured all of their love and attention into the levels, which is fine. Like, it's, it does not every boss fight has to be this epic showdown in a game. I think
Such a great lesson in creativity, right? Of like if we would rather have Mega Man 2 as with its flaws than not have it, right? And so I'm glad they just we don't have time for this. We're just gonna make it okay and get it out there.
Yeah. And so you take that heat ray and you take it over to, I believe, Woodman.
Woodman, sure. Yeah, fire, trees, makes sense.
Yep, and this is the forest level we talked about before. It is, beautifully, as you would expect, lush. And this one's also full of really fun, expressive, I'll say creatures, but they're not. They're all robots. But, they're robot bats. And they're, a cute design. So it looks like a bowling ball. It's this black sphere that then opens up into these big purple wings and, cute. It almost looks like a Furby. Those fly at you.
Yeah. Looks like a Furby, absolutely.
Yeah, and then there's those big blue wolves.
There's big blue wolves, and they're kind of you can't get past them without hurting them. The bats, you can kind of maybe run past or jump over, but yeah, the wolves things or whatever
you have to kill. They take a lot of hits and they're real large. You can't jump over them, so you have to go after them and take them down. And they're not that hard. They spit out those balls in this kind of reverse parabola. They go down and then up. So you just kind of get yourself in the middle there and jump over them, like a jump rope basically, and just keep firing away till he goes down. And there's also, I believe there's some where are they, monkeys or gorillas later on, swinging around?
Looks like gorillas, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're hanging from underneath, which is cool. We haven't seen a robot do that yet. And then they fling themselves up in kind of a way you don't expect.
Yeah, I like that. Again, the earlier Mega Man or earlier games, the game of Mega Man 1 would just have kind of these certain repeating enemies that you would just sort of see in every stage. They weren't that interesting. Sort of like Mario, in that the level, the obstacle course is different, but the turtles and the Goombas and stuff are all kind of the same. Here, there are certain holdover. There's those little guys with the hard hats that pop. You can't kill until they look up. There's those guys.
Yeah.
There's a few of these repeating enemies, but basically each stage, like I said, is its own biome with its own unique creatures and things to deal with.
Which I really love, and they kind of continued that theme with later Mega Mans too.
Absolutely, yeah. Once they hit this, it's okay, we cracked it. We've got the formula. So Mega Man 3, the differences between Mega Man 3 and Mega Man 2 are pretty negligible. It's kind of just more of the same, which is not surprising because once this was a hit, they pumped that thing out super fast. To another one of these things where it's okay, Capcom was all right, you made all the money, make another one now. Mega Man 3,
no.
Yeah, Mega Man 3 is pretty fun, but I think
this
remains.
I like them all.
This remains the best one, I think. So we meet Woodman, he's basically a tree. These guys all kind of look like mascots to a degree. He's a tree stump with arms and legs.
Yeah,
and he has this there's basically two things he's doing. He's got these leaves that float down back and forth from the ceiling, 4 at a time, which you have to sort of dodge in between, which is tricky. And then he will shield himself with these 4 leaves that go around him, and you can't hit him at all until he fires this rotating thing of 4 leaves at you, which you have to then jump over and then hit him while he's vulnerable before he does it again.
Yep. And if you've got the atomic fire, you get it done pretty quick.
Oh yeah, well he's a tree. That makes sense, right? They again, it's an 8-way rock paper scissors, so it of course makes sense.
Yes.
And so you take that Woodman and you go over to Airman stage. I love this stage. I think a lot of people hate it, but you're in the sky. So again, the big danger is a lot of bottomless pits.
Yes. I would say I love to watch people play this stage. I hate to play this stage.
It definitely, like, this is one of those things that gives you this fear of heights, even though, like, it's no more really it's no more bottomless pits than any other game of this vintage.
Yeah. But it's, it's very blue with clouds, and the clouds, kind of dictate where you go, and they even hide some of the level, which is kind of cool. And you've got these, again, I don't know what they're called, but these huge face enemies with these, like, little pointy
Horns.
Horns, yeah.
But they come out. So, like, the head you're talking about isn't really the enemy. That's a platform. So you're standing on what looks like this giant, like, sort of robot version of a tiki mask, sort of.
Yes.
And then you'll see what looks like horns come out of, like, the left and right sides of it on the top. And then they come out, and then those are two robots that you have to kill. And they will continually just keep going. So you kill them, and then more come, and more. So what the game is telling you is you just get a move on. You're never going to stop this. You just have to keep going, jump over this thing, and get to the next one. And while you're on top of this stuff, of course, there's, like, flying bird-like enemies that are harrying you to. And we should mention, like, the knockback.
Oh yeah, like, so when if you hit one of these spikes, it'll knock you back and probably into the bottomless pit, depending on which one you hit.
Yeah, well, if you hit any enemy, what happens is you lose some of your health, but you also, for a moment, your character kind of goes like, and then you move backwards a few pixels, and you can't break out of it. Like, it's an automatic animation that happens, which means if you're too close to the edge of a ledge and this happens, you're falling to your death.
Yep.
And so, you make your way just through a bunch of this stuff to meet Airman. Another great design. I love this design.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a floor, like, box fan with arms and eyes and stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't have some of these have, like, characters have, like, faces and mouths and stuff. This one doesn't. He's just like sort of like an upside down triangle, the bulk of which is this big blue fan, and then he's just sort of got eyes on top of it. And he's constantly trying to blow you, side to side, and but the blowing around oddly does not affect the leaves that you use in your shield to then just, like, toss those at him and take him down.
Yeah, you'd think, like, I remember thinking that shield was like, oh, I'm protected. It's like, nope, not quite. It's just a weapon.
Yeah, it goes around. Well, you can use it if you bump into an enemy. So if you have the shield going around you and you bump into an enemy, they'll die. But if they shoot, like, projectiles at you, those will go through the shield and hit you.
Yeah.
And then, let's see, you take Airman and you take him to Crash
Quick
Man. Is it Quick Man?
Oh, Crash Man.
No? Which one?
Nope, hang on. No, I'm sure you probably said it right. Air Shooter to Crash Man. Yep, I said it wrong. Yep.
Crash Man. So this one is a vertical stage. Like, you're constantly just climbing and climbing and climbing these ladders, and if you fall off, you won't die, but you're going to fall down several screens and have to work your way all the way back up. And of course, all the enemies respawn. If you kill all the enemies on a screen, you leave and you go to the next screen. If you were to pop right back in, those enemies would be there as if nothing had happened. So, real slog kind of climbing up this thing. If you have the little elevators, that will help you, but it's tough.
Yeah, and the background's interesting because it starts out pretty much a lot like Airman's, right? Because it's like blue background, white clouds, and then at some point it becomes night, and, like, it looks like there's stars, and so it's like you're outside the whole time.
Well, it's like you're going above the atmosphere, right? You're climbing so high. I think that's what they're going. I think that's what they're going for.
Got it.
Because the stage actually looks sort of like, imagine that, like, giant orange, like on the space when they would have the space shuttle. There's that giant orange, like, crane type thing. You would go up. The astronauts would go up to get to where the the rocket is, and that is kind of the aesthetic here. It's a lot of, like, orange rebar looking stuff, construction site, things, and you go up and up this thing until you get to the top. And Crashman, like, he fires like this very quick little torpedo at you that then explodes. And if it misses you, it will stick to the wall for a couple of seconds and then explode. It's like sort of like a little like grenade / landmine.
Yeah. Which those we'll need later.
Yeah, and the airman weapon that you get what it does is it fires these 3 little tornadoes that arc up and away from you. So it's kind of a limited usefulness because if an enemy it only works if an enemy is kind of diagonally up from you, and so you have to kind of wait for like Crashman to jump over you and time it because they move sort of slow, so you have to sort of get that timing just right.
Yeah, and they call him Crashman, but his body, he's just got 2 little drill hands. So I'm not sure how that crash and drill, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah, not as one of the weaker ones in terms of the theming, I think.
Yeah,
and then he gives you this weapon. So throughout the game, you'll find these like sort of blocks that are basically gates. If you have Crashman's weapon, you fire one of these little sticky mines at it that blow up, and that will open the way forward through what was previously impassable.
Yep.
And is that all of it?
And then Quickman. Did we do Quickman already?
Yeah, he gives you the boomerang, right?
Then we're done.
Okay.
Then we're back at the end of the thing.
So you've done all 8 of the robot masters. You've taken them all down. And now you go into the final gauntlet, which is the castle of Dr. Wily. Which is this, there's basically 5 stages to it. And now we're in sort of more of a, like kind of a stone and steel, enemy base type environment. And the bosses on these are real fun because they're these really, really big sprites. And the first one is kind of notoriously hard. So not much to talk about with the level. You're just kind of clambering over platforms and up ladders and stuff until you get to this dragon fight.
Mecha Dragon.
Yeah, did you struggle with this?
Big and green, and oh yeah, of course. I struggled with everything. I was not a very good at video games. I just liked them, but he's it's like a green. He almost looks like a children's like Puff the Magic Dragon kind of thing with like a blue jacket.
Yeah, but again, a robot. But yeah, I think that's a great descriptor. He is kind of Puff the Magic Dragon.
Yeah, and then the really hard part about it is his stage doesn't look like, the Robot Master's boss stages are different. You're on 3 blocks suspended in an otherwise bottomless pit.
Well, first he kind of pursues you through, so you're running to the right, jumping from block to block to block as he is coming at you. And eventually you get to a point where, it stops. Like you've got these 3, and it's just 1 block wide. And you have to jump between them while he's firing at you. And he's weakest to the boomerang. So you have to kind of like take time to sort of turn in his direction and fire off these boomerangs at him while doing the high wire act of staying on these blocks. It's pretty tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Notoriously tough.
Fun.
And the music in the first Wily stage is, among all of these great tracks, one of the best ones.
Nice. I'm gonna have to revisit that.
Oh yeah, no, I go back to this soundtrack all the time. This one and 3. So you beat this, you move on to the next Wily stage. Which again, these are all kind of more of the same in terms of stages. It's a lot of spikes, it's sort of like the final exam. They're using all of the tricks they showed you before, but now they're all happening at once.
Yep.
And this one, I believe you make your way to that giant like bulldozer robot.
Yeah, according to this, it's Pico Kun. I don't know how to pronounce it.
It's Japanese.
I'm not the guy to consult, but yeah, this looks more standard. You're in a box kind of thing, and it's like a little drill-looking tank kind of thing. I
Yeah,
don't know how to describe it.
but it's huge. It's like an anthropomorphized, like picture like a bulldozer, like heavy duty construction equipment with like a giant robot torso coming and a head coming out of the top of it, and so it kind of like moves forward and backward, and you have to sort of keep your distance from it while it fires things at you, and then make sure you're hitting. It's not vulnerable everywhere. I believe it has a couple of like specific spots where it's vulnerable to taking damage. Again, one of the best like sprites on the NES, just like a huge, detailed, like really just lively drawing. I don't know how else to describe it, but like, it's the kind of thing that would like fire your imagination as a kid, as opposed to like some of these just like it's a couple like blobs.
Got it. Okay, this is why I wasn't getting it. This is the guy for Wily Fortress 3.
Is that
Guts Dozer?
Oh, okay. I skipped over one. That's why. All right. What's the guy for?
I was like, man, I didn't remember this at all. No, this guy's like a little. It almost looks like a moth kind of thing or something. Little purple guy, and you're just in a box.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Less interesting, but no. Yeah. Back to the big old bulldozer again. Big personality, big graphics. Just beautiful looking art. It's it's clearly inspiration for games like Cuphead later and that kind of thing.
Well, this is the anime influence here is obvious, right? You look at these and the art style is pure classic Dragon Ball Z type anime where big eyes on these things and kind of just wildly cartoony looks. Like again, they're supposed to be like killer robots, but everything about them is like, I want to get a plush of this thing so I can hug it.
Yeah.
So we go through a couple more stages of this stuff, and then I guess basically we get to Wily, so you fight Dr. Wily in like a big mech, and then he runs off after you kill him, or you think you kill him.
Okay.
And you. I'm sorry. We didn't talk about the boss rush. This is the like.
I was about to say, the before this is the big old like you thought you beat the bosses once, now beat them all again.
Yeah, you're in this. This is a very Mega Man thing. You're in this room. There's 8 teleporters. There's no way to know which robot they go to. So unless you have it, you've written it down before and you go into one. All of a sudden, you just basically do the exact same boss fight you did before. So you pull out the weapon is most useful. You kill them, and when you kill them, you don't get anything for it, but you do get a little extra health. So that will help you hopefully survive. Getting through all 8 of them in a single go. Which you do, and not much more to say about it other than that, except this becomes a classic staple for the series of like and other games like it. Like we've talked about Shovel Knight on this podcast. I've talked about it with you a few times. I don't know if you had a chance to try it yet. Have you played it yet?
Not yet.
Oh man, you gotta play Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight does this too. There's a one of these right near the end. And what they do is instead of having it be like a teleporter that you go into, in Shovel Knight, the game kind of randomizes the order they go in. And so it's, but every time, like if you die and you try it again, you'll get them in a different order. So
nice.
you're never able to totally just, prepare for it. But a lot of fun. I cannot recommend Shovel Knight highly enough. If you can't have any love for games of this vintage, please play Shovel Knight. It's you can beat it in an afternoon. It is a delight from top to bottom. Anyway, so
nice.
So we killed this.
Now we get to
Wily, who's just again in like a big giant machine that you fire away at. Not too interesting here, but then he you think you killed him, but he hops in his little like flying saucer and flies away. And you go through this weird little level that's like it's interesting. It's not even a level. It's like this vestibule where like. There's just like acid dripping from the ceiling here and there. It's sort of like we talked about with Simon's Quest, where like you get to Dracula's castle and it's really empty and there's something spookier about less happening at this point.
Yeah, interesting parallel. Yeah.
I think it makes you just again as a gamer, you're so used to, all right, this thing is constantly throwing projectiles and creatures at me, and bottomless pits and spikes and everything else. And to just go through this one little cave with this minor little obstacle of the dripping acid, it gives you that. It makes you feel like, all right, when's the other shoe going to drop?
Yeah.
And boy, do they do something weird here.
Yeah. Apparently, Dr. Wily was an alien the whole time.
Yeah, he looks like Mark Twain, like this kind of cartoon human. And again, Mark Twain, maybe they're going for Einstein, but he looks more like Mark Twain to me. Anyway, but he morphs into this like classic sort of, alien creature, which they never came back to in the series. It was never explained. They never tried to I don't think they justify it when Wily's back in Mega Man 3 of he's still an alien. I think we all just sort of pretend that never happened because it's too freaking weird for him to just all of a sudden be an alien out of nowhere. But then he goes into again, he's sort of flying around, and the only way to the secret way to kill him here is use the bubble, which he's I believe they do a thing where if you hit him with anything other than the bubble, his health goes back up.
Goes up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
that takes a while to figure out.
It takes you a while to go all right, I better use this bubble. But again, as we said with the bubble, it's real. It's not very useful as a weapon because it barely goes up in this small arc and then rolls along the floor. It's useful for finding hidden holes in the floor, which another thing from Simon's Quest they do. These pits that they're otherwise completely undetectable. But so you have to wait.
Interesting how these things overlap like that, those parallels.
Yeah. And so you have to wait for him to kind of get within range. Either he has to be right up next to you or down near the ground, which is rare. He's mostly flying around. So it's a lot of you bobbing and weaving, waiting for an opening to do this. But then you kill him.
Yeah. Yep.
And you get an awesome little ending. Doesn't he cry here? Doesn't he kind of pound on the floor and go? Wah? Is that this one?
Yeah, I don't.
I think in one of the games he does that.
Yeah. I definitely remember that in general. I don't remember if it was this game or not.
I think he does. I think he turns back into a human form, and then he's just doing classic kid tantrum, banging on the floor stuff.
You broke all my toys.
Yeah, and then we get this cute little ending of Mega Man walking the lonely road back home.
Yeah, and that's the and you're talking about what is it about this game that I love? Some games I would play through and I would either beat them or I'd get bored and that would be it. But some games I would just replay over and over and over, and reliably whenever a new Mega Man came out, whether it was as good as the last one or not, the replay value on these of just I'm just gonna go beat 3 or 4 bosses right now just to go play little Mega Man, and that's I rarely would play it all the way through, but just those, especially with the codes and everything, just go back in and play these games. It was just always fun, and it sounded good and it looked good with colors and the play was good. Just a good game.
This game benefits a lot from its atmosphere, and it's one of those things where I think you look at it critically and you can see some of the flaws of okay, the bosses are too easy. Some of these traversal challenges are too hard. Once you know the order in which to kill all of the bosses, it trivializes certain things, right? All of those criticisms are valid, but the vibe of the game, there's something about just settling in, hearing those great chip tunes kick in, and I think Mega Man himself is such a tight. The controls on him are so tight and so wonderful to use. You can really make him stop on a dime and do whatever you want. You get used to that, and you get used once you kind of internalize where all of the enemies are and where to go. It becomes like a routine, but it's a really satisfying routine to go through. And so it was a game that years later I'd be you know what? Yeah, I'm in the mood for Mega Man 2. Why not? Let's do it again. in a way that I never was for any of the later ones. Even though they're fun, they follow the same formula, but there's something about this particular one where it was just like all of the subsequent NES Mega Man games were sort of chasing this high, and I don't. It was often imitated, never duplicated, right?
Yeah. To me, their next big real feature was Mega Man X. That was the one that I thought they really kind of upped the ante after, however many Mega Mans they did on the regular Nintendo.
Yeah, they did 6, and then Mega Man X is sort of not quite a reboot, but a new series for the Super Nintendo. So now they brought it into the 16-bit era, and it adds a bunch of different features, and it's generally the same formula. It's also a really fun, wonderful game in its own right, but it is just really just again they found this formula and they recycled it. There are some nice innovations to Mega Man X, but and then they got into there's all kinds of really weird games. There's this character named Zero they invented, and Proto Man. They sort of brought these in. They had all of these Mega Man Legends and Mega Man Battle Networks. These sort of totally different. Like it took place in the Mega Man universe, but not the same formatted game. I never really got into those or tried them, so I can't speak to them. But it's funny that they finally came around to like when they ended up making like Mega Man 8, 9, and 10, and then eventually I think 11 now, they went back to the NES formula. They said, this is what people want. They want the old blue bomber.
Yeah, and I thought that was fun, because you've talked about that before with Castlevania. Like, they had all these restrictions, so they got to make this beautiful art, and now we can do so much more. But it's like, there's still some, but I like what they had, even though they were so limited.
Yeah, I don't know that I couldn't imagine a modern Mega Man on like the PS5, like how that would work. It would be 3D, and they'd probably make it open world, and it would just, they could make an interesting game, I suppose, but it wouldn't have the right feel, And even this team, like famously, so Kenji Inafune did a crowd-funded game called Mighty Number 9. So somehow I think he did not have the rights from Capcom to make a new Mega Man game. But he said, well, basically I'll make Shmega Man. I'll try to make something that's really similar. And just I've never played it, but the critical consensus was nope, big nope on Mighty Number 9. So I can't speak to it, but like it does say something, like I said, that when they made these newer ones, they went back to the original formula.
Yeah.
And I hear they're wickedly hard.
Oh yeah, I haven't had the pleasure of playing them.
I'll have to give them a try one of these days when I feel like a little mesocore platforming, as they call it. So we're kind of coming to the end here, and Rich, why do you think it is that Mega Man 2 has had the legacy it's had? Because this is one of these games that, again, like when the lists of the best video games ever made are circulated by whatever publication, this one's always on there somewhere.
Yeah, everything we talked about, it was the music, the art, the innovation, all the colors, the gameplay. It's an imperfect game, but it struck the right chord with people at the time. And, as you said, for most people, it was their introduction to Mega Man. They didn't know the first one. Kind of like most of us didn't know Street Fighter 1 the same. But this just, I don't know, it was just a big hit. And it launched Mega Man. We mentioned this before, I think, in the Castlevania podcast, of that he was a main character in
Captain N. Yeah, we forgot to talk about
Captain N, the Game Master, right? And like that, just for me at that time, like really immersed me in this world of like, okay, Nintendo's the whole. Before I was using the term comic book universe or whatever, like Nintendo felt like a universe of like you've got your Mega Man right next to your Mario, right next to your Simon Belmont, etc., etc.
Surprise! Happy birthday, Mega Man!
I thought you forgot.
Hey, we're your friends. Good friends would never forget their best little buddy's birthday.
We have another surprise for you, Mega Man.
Dr. Wright, my creator.
Happy birthday, Mega Man!
Make a wish and blow out the candles. Oh, this isn't exactly what I was wishing for.
What did you wish for, Mega Manicus? I can't tell you that, Kid Icarus. If I do, it won't come true.
How about opening your presents, Mega Man?
Oh, boy. What's this?
It's a software cartridge that will automatically teach you how to exercise.
Wow. Thanks, Your Highness. I'll grow mega muscles with this.
yeah, he appears like, he's a pillar of this early video game world, and he's sort of dropped off to a degree compared to some of those other franchises. But there's something about the Blue Bomber, as they call him. I think it has to do with like that. You want this kind of one-to-one feeling of your video game avatar in your hands. You want it to feel like, whatever my mind wants him to do, he will do. And because the controls for Mega Man are so tight and responsive, there's something about that makes the play feel really, really satisfying as you're bopping around shooting all these things. And there's challenges, but it's not hyper challenging, moment to moment. There are certain spots where it's like, a little hard to traverse this area. But by and large, like the combat between you and these enemies isn't merciless the way it is in 1. And so you get that empowerment fantasy of like, I am, knocking down all of these cute little robots. And again, like you said, the aesthetics, the music and the visuals are so charming that it's a fun world to inhabit.
Yeah. Oh, one thing we just forgot to mention is an upgrade from 1, and another thing that I like about it is that in Mega Man 1 there was a points thing, and there were things that would give you points, and it was pointless to have those points.
Yeah.
And they did away with that in this game, and it was one of the few games I remember growing up that didn't have any kind of a points thing, and I was like, I kind of liked that.
Yeah, I mean, like for Super Mario Brothers has a points system that is mostly useless, and it's a holdover from the arcade days, right? When it was all about who could get the high score, and people quickly were like, "That's just a number, and I don't care." Especially when I'm playing at home and no one's going to see. So smart of them to excise that from the game. So that kind of covers it for Mega Man 2. It is a breezy delight of a game, and it's something I'll go back to every once in a while, even as an adult, because it's just something fun. It just feels like I just want a quick snack of a game. I'll go play Mega Man. Yeah. But like I said, I will say that if you want something more modern that has that feel. Has some of the edges smooth, sanded off for a smoother ride. Shovel Knight is absolutely the way to go. Its soundtrack is every bit as good as Mega Man 2's and more. Wow. The visual, it is a treat. Rich, I cannot strongly enough recommend.
Before our next podcast recording, I will have experienced Shovel Knight.
If you buy it today, you could beat it tonight. It doesn't take long, but you will. I promise you will devour that game. If based on your love for Mega Man 2, and I assume the NES DuckTales as well. Oh yeah, it's basically like the love child of those two games in terms of play. So you'll love it. All right, so here we are at the end. Rich, where can people find you if they want to find you?
If you're interested in improv coaching or dropping in an improv class for free for the first time, richbakercoaching.com or at richbakercoaching on Instagram and Facebook.
And if you want to find us, we are on, I'm not going to call it Twitter, it's X, so we're going to call it 10. I'm fucking calling it Roman numeral 10 because fuck Elon Musk. Anyway, we're still on there, waiting for it to be sold at a yard sale to someone better. So we're there at Nostalgium Pod. We're also on Threads, and then you can find us, look for Nostalgium Arcanum on Instagram. And please do, like I said, go out of your way to follow us there because that's where I post all the bonus reels for this. So if you have thoughts on Mega Man 2 or our last two episodes, which were Yu-Gi-Oh!, the original 1993 Doom, which Rich was also kind enough to guest on, and before that, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Coming up next, I'm not sure because I have recorded our episodes for Muppet Treasure Island and 1989's Batman. They're both great episodes. I am still on the fence as to what to do with the ongoing SAG-AFTRA writer's strike. Because in theory we shouldn't be promoting struck content because fuck those studio heads. The people, the creatives deserve what they're entitled to. So I'm not sure if I'm going to release those yet or how I feel about them. So but I do want to get those episodes out to you guys. So I don't entirely know if I'm going to try and squeak in something else here, but it sure would be nice to have Batman be the 50th episode of this podcast, which was what it would be if I just did those two next. So, all right, I may have to just cave here and be a scab, but anyway, I'll figure out what to do next. But those are on the horizon. They are recorded and they are a lot of fun. So look for those. All right, so Rich, thanks again for coming by, man.
As always, a pleasure, Doug. Thank you.
All right, until next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgium Arcanum.
What do you make of these?
These seem to be energy resources. But I've never seen this type on Earth. I don't know where this energy came from, but I cannot let it fall into Dr. Wally's hands. You must recover all the energy immediately, MegaMan.
But where is Dr. Wily?
That's a good question. We may be able to locate another energy emission from the radar room. When we find that meteor, we'll find Dr. Wily.